I am Jane Ring. I am the Parent Support Officer from Look. Welcome to our panel event about movement for mental health. I have been working behind the scenes with Nicola van der Wood from RSBC and Charlotte from Victor Children to make this event for you. It's something we're all very passionate about because we don't talk about it enough, kind of how to look after ourselves, how to support us when we are there for our children, advocating for them. So we felt this year we wanted to do an event for us, and we were proud of that. So this is what has come about. So even though the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week is movement, this is much more about coping with overwhelm. So our wonderful panel members have been pulled together to help to share their stories, to help you think about this in your own right. So we have Louise. Louise Goff was somebody who attended the parent support group from Look a long time ago. We started it in lockdown and I was a volunteer, and Louise came along. We had about 7 or 8 of us came. So I'm really delighted to ask her back to this, to share her story about her daughter and some difficult times they've been through, but also how Samantha is now thriving. So Louise will be speaking later. We have 2 brilliant mentors, Callum, who is, well, he's in the top right of my screen, and Lauren, who both work in the field of mental health. So they've got wisdom to share about that, but also it's just great to hear from them as capable, blind and partially sighted adults, and it's a service that Look provide. We have Jo in the background from Look, who works on the parent support group with me, so she will be taking notes, making sure that everything is kind of recorded. We have Suzanne. Now Suzanne is a proud graduate of the Healthy Parent Carer course that Look now runs, so Suze will be talking about what she's learned from it and the things that she now has got in her toolkit to help her when she feels overwhelmed. And we have Nicola. Nicola, thank heavens, is going to be kind of introducing the topic, making sure that we're all aware of the importance of our looking after our well-being, and then kind of helping us summarize at the end. She is the clinical lead of the RSBC Families First scheme, so but we're in safe, capable hands, I feel. So, Nicola, I think that is all that you need to hear from me for the time being. So, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. That was a lovely introduction for my part. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm Nicola. What I'm going to do is just kind of set us up for what we're going to go on to hear from our panel about how parent carers can just start to think really gently about ways of looking after themselves, of reaching out for support to help look after themselves. And as Jane said, you know, we're thinking about this idea of movement, which is what this Mental Health Awareness Week is all about. Just in terms of like approaching movement really gently, movement in your mind, movement in your well-being, to make really small changes or steps forward when things are feeling particularly overwhelming. So I wanted to set us up with that. I've got a presentation which is mainly to keep me on track. I'm only going to be speaking for 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen, and I've got that, and that'll hopefully help me remember everything that I would like to say to start us off. Okay, so I'm going to share that. Have a look. Am I sharing as a slideshow? I can't see anybody else, but if it's not sharing as a presentation, can somebody indicate that to me, please? But hopefully it is.
You're all good.
Lovely. Thank you, Jim.
You can see, yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So this is what we know, don't we? We know that fear and worry for our children's future, for their rights and for the well-being, often leave parent carers physically and mentally exhausted. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. Sounds very familiar to me from what I've heard parent carers talk about and families that I work with. So words that come up for parent carers is that they can feel overwhelmed or stuck. And again, I'm just inviting you to think, do those words fit for you sometimes? Are there other emotions that you might feel? There's probably lots, but those ones seem to come up over and over, overwhelmed, so much to do, not sure where to turn to next, unable to move forward in the systems that they're trying to navigate. And that's a big theme of tonight, thinking about these systems that are supposed to support your child with a vision impairment. There's so many systems, there's so many procedures, so many appointments. And what we hear time and time again, and we'll hear from our panel members about their lived experience from some of them, that this comes up time and time again about parents having to navigate these systems and fight them in many ways. And we really wish it wasn't like that, but that's what we're dealing with a lot. So what I'm just going to do is really briefly look at some research into and sort of share with you some research into this issue of parent carer wellbeing, parent carers of young people with a disability. And I wanted to share the research because I'm sure that between us all, we could share lots of anecdotes about these feelings of being overwhelmed, of being stuck, of being exhausted. But I think there's about the research that really narrows down like the essence of what that parent stress can look like and how people experience it. So hopefully that'll feel helpful for you just to hear it, what the researchers said when they're looking. I'm only going to share 2 studies with you, so it won't be too much information, hopefully. And then we're going to, as Jane said, speak to our panel members, hear their experiences and just start to pull together some of the things that they're saying about ways in which they've moved forward past challenges when they felt stuck or overwhelmed, and people, organisations and support that they've reached out to. So this is a study from 2022, which was looking at parenting stress among parents who have a child or children who've got a vision impairment. And what really interested me about this study is what it pinpoints as parenting stress in this context. So there was a lot of talk about what parents said. They identified these feelings of anxiety and tension that were there nearly all of the time. So those were 2 feelings that really popped up, even when, the very rare moments when they felt that they'd done everything that they needed to do for that particular issue that was going on, or, they're dealing with the school, dealing with the hospital, dealing with the clinics. There was still this feeling of anxiety and tension that was really prevalent. Feelings of I can't cope. So that used to come up, I can't cope. And something that I didn't write on this slide actually in my presentation, but that came up was I can't cope, but I can't say I can't cope. And I think that that's something that's come up a lot that I've heard parent carers talk about, and we'll hear a bit more about tonight. Another factor in this study that was identified by these parents is the demands that are being placed on the parent are too high. And what that meant was the demand was so huge, or like too many frequent demands, that they didn't have enough resource to meet it. So not enough time to meet all the demands that were on them. Sometimes there's a cost element, not enough money for that, not enough support from the organisations as a resource to meet the demand, which all, kind of contribute to this stress. So the stress that is attributed to, so that some of the stress as well, another factor from this, is attributed to inadequate support that's out there. And this is painting a really bleak picture in some areas, isn't it? When some of the funding, either the funding isn't there or the staffing's not there to be able to get the support from organisations and the system that support the VI young person, and it's just not there, or it's very, very hard to access. So the last bit from this study that was highlighted was the lack of social support that parents who have a VI child or children have. And that's not just, I mean, part of that was the support from family and friends, but it's also the lack of sort of the societal structures about how we respond to and support as a whole families where there is additional need for the child in the family. And obviously we're thinking specifically in this study about vision impairment, that isn't there. You know, there's no talking about that. There's no framework for people who don't have a VI child about how to support other people. It's not within our communities and talked about, which feels massive to me, really, and what a change that would be if we did have that. So I just wanted to share one other study. This is from a bit longer ago, but I think this one, so this is from 2009, but this shows a disparity between parents who are parent carers to a child with a health problem. So this isn't specific to VI, but it does include some children who've got VI. And as we know, a lot of young people with VI will have multiple needs. So it's comparative of the parents of those children, their experiences, and the experiences of parent who don't have a child who's got any additional health problem. So what they identify, what they were looking at through this is like chronic conditions. These were the measures that they were trying to look at the two different groups by. Chronic conditions, so the chronic conditions that were reported by both sets of parents, and that could be a mental health condition or a physical condition. Any activity limitations, that's what they were looking for. People weren't able to get out and do activity, do exercise, which we obviously know keeps people really healthy. They were looking at general health symptoms, and they were also looking at symptoms of depressive symptoms, they've called it, symptoms around depression or low mood. And they were looking at social support and family functioning. So what they were doing was talking to both groups of parents about, you know, under each of these headings to see how they were responding to that. And what we find, I don't think this is a surprise anecdotally from what we hear, but more than twice, parents who were looking after a child with a health need were more than twice as likely to report chronic conditions, and that can be physical and mental health difficulties. They also reported twice as likely to report activity limitations, so they're not able to get out and do things that keep them healthy. So that could be exercise, but just kind of, you know, any activity that you might do outside the home that would kind of contribute to well-being and fitness. And they were significantly more likely to report depressive symptoms and poorer general health. So I guess what this study is really highlighting is that there is a really big disparity between these two groups of parents, and the parents who are looking after a child who's got health needs, because of everything that they need to do, the systems that they're working within, because there is a lack of societal support, it does impact on health. And I guess it feels really important to highlight this, to say how important it is. I think that's what I'm trying to put across with these, thinking about these studies, how important it is to look at making really small inroads to look after yourself as a parent carer and get some support. There are organisations out there that we can talk about as we go along tonight. Oh, I forgot to do my bits from the highlighting bits. I've got a model on screen of the research I was telling you about, and it does a fancy thing with the PowerPoint that I've missed. It's been missed. So I just wanted to say a little bit before I move on about the barriers to parent carers looking after themselves and to seeking support. And I thought it feels really important to highlight the barriers. And this, what we're not going to say today, what all of our panel are not going to say, is that we can get rid of these barriers. We can't. These barriers are really real. There's probably way more than we've written down here. You know, these are ones that I've heard families say to me. They're ones that I've asked about, what are the barriers to looking after yourself or seeking that support to get help, you know, help for looking after yourself. They can't go away, but what we're trying to think about is how can we approach these barriers kindly? How can we make some small shifts to these barriers that might just allow a little bit more, not time really, but a little bit more sort of desire to look after yourself, or an allowance somehow. I don't know if I'm getting my words quite right there, but to go into looking after yourself. So I wonder if any of these sound familiar as I'm saying them. So some of the barriers: support from family and friends. It's either not there, there's no support within your network, or if there is, it can be hard to ask, or maybe you feel like you've asked too many times, so you can't ask again. A feeling that you should be able to manage, and maybe this feeling that other parents don't ask for friends and family for support and don't want to be a burden. They're the things I've heard about, why people don't ask family and friends if family and friends are actually there. And then you've got this other bit about barriers, which is relating to time. There's no time to have any, time for yourself, time for looking after yourself, time to sort of just recover in a way from the overwhelm and get a little bit more like recovery time, and more a rest and a pause to refill, to move on. So there's no time because there's always a deadline to meet, something for the child or young person needs filling out or completing. So endless lists of what needs to get done, and then fear of not having done enough. So no stone is unturned. So this thing of, even if on that very rare occasion you do get to the end of your list, it's like, what have I left? What have I left out? What could I be doing more of to support my child and get them everything that they need to thrive? And, the general too exhausted after an entire day of looking after your young person's needs, doing your job if you're working, doing your other stuff if you're not working, and then everything else that we do around these systems to try and get what's necessary really for our young person. Some other barriers: no privacy. There's no privacy at home. Feeling guilty that you can't take the care of yourself and the time for yourself, or a feeling guilty or a worry that you'd be judged for not coping. Having time for yourself or with loved ones or with other loved ones, not your child, with a VI can make people feel guilty. It can bring up those feelings that you should be with that child or doing something for the child all the time. And I guess this is highlighting it's not the feelings of guilt there as well, because come around because of everything that you're trying to do. Sometimes feelings surface when there's nothing to do. Some of those, the really sort of complicated feelings that might be being held whilst you're being really busy and containing everything, they can sometimes come to the fore when there's nothing happening. And what do you do with them then? So maybe like a fear of unraveling and not being able to kind of manage again, not being able to put it all back in and carry on. And this feeling of relaxing, you don't know how to relax anymore. It's been so long. This is what I've heard since some of the parent carers have had time to relax. They don't know what to do to relax, not sure what will help. So frustration and anger was also talked about when there's no certainty about the child's future. And doing things for yourself can be challenging when for the rest of the family, if your role in the family has always been the carer, or for a long time has been the carer, and you want to take a little break from that can sometimes be really difficult for other people to accept. So I guess all of these things are really relevant barriers, aren't they? And really, like, I'm sure that there can be a lot of them can be true at the same time, different things at different times in your journey as a parent carer. And there's probably a lot more as well. So it's just like, so what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do is highlight these barriers, and then some of what we can talk about today can just be ways to just approach those really gently, to be able to try and make some small movements in getting some support as a parent carer. So I just wanted to move on lastly before we move on to the rest of the panel, and we'll be hearing more. I'm going to talk about the Healthy Parent Carers course and programme, and we're going to hear more about that later from Jane and Suze. They're going to talk about specifically about this course. So this is a course the researchers from the University of Exeter and parent carers developed this course in response to that research that I've been talking about, and research like it, that parent carers of disabled children tend to have poorer mental and physical health than other parents. So this is about a response to that. So many organisations recognise this real disparity, the detrimental impact on the parents who are looking after a child with a vision impairment because of everything they've got to do, because of the systems that they're up against. And there is support out there. So please reach out. We'll be hearing about some of that tonight. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to play you a video which just kind of outlines the Healthy Parent Carers course and talks about some of these, highlights some of these issues that I've started to bring up now and that we're going to hear more about from our panel tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing now and then I can share the video with you. Hopefully sound is shared and I have lined it up well. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to put this on full screen and I'll press play. If Jane, I can see you, will you give me thumbs up or thumbs down if it's not there's no sound or anything?
Parent carers definitely struggle with their own well-being and mental health because ultimately it's all about the child.
The stress levels for looking after a disabled child or any child with an additional need is incalculable.
I spent so much time focusing on my child that I put myself so far at the bottom that actually it was like I didn't exist.
When I heard about the scheme, it sounded really exciting because it was looking at lots of different ways of looking after yourself. And actually, through my daughter's illness, I was becoming very depressed, very anxious, and that was then impacting on how I was caring for her. So I wanted to just make sure I was looking after myself so that I could be the best that I could to help care for her.
The Healthy Parent Carers programme is about focusing on yourself, starting to give yourself time back, learning how to look after yourself, learning that you are an important person in your household.
We were there because we were parent carers and we wanted to learn how to look after ourselves. So finding that common denominator and being in that situation really helped me. There was no judging and a lot of patience for each other's experiences.
I think what is really brilliant and important about this programme is that the facilitators are parent carers. That is extremely powerful for all of us who come and do the programme, because then we know that they will really understand our day-to-day lives. Even though I felt I was coping quite well, you know, there's those little things that you suddenly realise, actually, I wasn't making enough time to think about what I'm doing on a daily basis because I am so busy. And it was very much the little things, but then the little things actually become bigger in your life and you feel that I'm dealing with other things much better.
What I liked most about the programme was the fact that you could slow down and just do things which were important for you. Having the online was really beneficial because at that point in my life I had to be in the house with my daughter. I could not leave the house. I could just tap in, do the online whenever I wanted to do around my daughter's needs.
I've made some major changes since I started the programme, which I would have never have done. I've signed up to the Open University and I've also looking after my health better.
Whether it's just having a 5-minute nap, you know, or time out with a cup of tea, connecting with friends, I'm more aware of doing those and the importance of doing those.
It's given me the confidence to feel good about myself and to enjoy life again. So I would definitely say do the course.
Right, I think that video is just fantastic at summing up, you know, said much more eloquently than what I've just been saying, and from parent carers themselves, which feels really important. So we'll look forward to hearing a bit more about that later. So thank you. I'm going to pass on now to Louise, who's going to talk. Am I, Jane? Sorry.
Yeah, you are, but actually before you did, I want to reinforce to you that people really resonated with what you were saying, I think, before we go on to the next bit. So Charlotte, are you happy to go through that? Is Charlotte there?
I'm there. I'm just in the background doing the spreadsheet. So we've had lots of comments here. A couple of parents have remarked that they didn't realise that it was so widespread when you've relayed some of the information about the stats. One parent has said that things are getting worse, not better, and they don't see a way out. A lot of people are shocked at the reports and detailing the isolation of being parent carers of disabled children from Susan. Sarah D, thank you. Said it all really resonated with her. She's feeling overwhelmed, endless appointments, stress, anxiety. Has been really surprised at the local authority and mainstream schools wraparound care providers and the responses. Feels like they've not dealt with a VI child before. People just appreciating, the information given by the studies. So that's a little summary there for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's it. Sometimes hearing it, that people have taken the time to do studies on this, and what you're experiencing it can be really common that you can hear other people are feeling this, and it's a thing. I know that's not a very sort of technical term, but it's a thing, and people do experience it. So thanks for saying that and sharing your comments and saying that you know it for yourself.
Absolutely, and it is the reason why RSBC, Victor, and Look do support parents as part of supporting families. It's so key, and that when we started conversations a few months ago, wasn't it, Nicola, about what we should do, it was actually Charlotte who really said, do you know what, we can talk about physical movement and we can talk about exercise, but we actually really want to just address what it can feel like when you are overwhelmed, when it's that feeling of not being in control of things, really wanting the best for your child, and so many unknowns. And it's not surprising, everyone, that it's difficult at times. So we're kind of there to help. There is different ways you can connect through our charities, but we just wanted you to know you aren't alone, and there's ways that you can look after yourself, and hopefully you'll get some support from tonight as well. So should I go on then and introduce Louise? So a few years ago, over lockdown, I contacted Charlotte from Look and said, this is really going wrong. There are these families like myself, because I am a parent carer, those who do not know me. I have a 15-year-old who is registered blind and is profoundly deaf, and she was struggling and I was struggling and everything had stopped, and I said, Charlotte, we need to do something for parents. So she said, okay, Jane, what should we do? And I said, well, let's start an online support group, so a place where parents can meet each other, and at least we won't feel alone with all the things that we're dealing with. Because I, for one, was not a good educator. My child did not want me to try and teach her anything, and it was just, her mental health was deteriorating and I just felt totally helpless. So I'm really delighted this evening that Louise is here to talk to you guys and share her story. So welcome, Louise. It's been a while. We did catch up last week, but I first met you in 2020 when we started running these online parent support groups. And there was about 7 or 8 of us, I think, that would meet pretty regularly and just go, okay, life is a bit difficult. And we supported each other. But I know that your daughter that was in a really difficult place. So you happy to just to say a little bit about yourself and kind of, yeah, that moment in time when we met?
Yes, of course. Hi, everybody. My name's Louise. I'm mother to Samantha. Samantha has cerebral visual impairment and now actually only has light perception. She requires a sighted guide wherever she goes. In 2020, when Luke just came at a time where I was probably at my lowest point, Samantha had a plan to commit suicide and was actively seeking to do that. We did have a lot of help from
Oh no, have you frozen? Has she frozen for other people?
pardon?
You froze briefly, but you're back now.
Oh, sorry. We did have help from professionals, but single-handedly, myself and my husband took it in turn to completely shadow Samantha. And that shadowing went on for over a year. You know, I slept in Samantha's bed every night because night times were when she was at.
Oh, we're struggling slightly, Louise. You might have to try and talk. If I turn my camera off as well, see if you.
Louise, you've muted yourself as well.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
I'm going to turn my camera off and see if that helps bandwidth.
That helps, yeah. So Samantha in 2020, she was really struggling, and we were at the point where she was actively looking to commit suicide. Things were just awful. You know, her sight had reduced so much, and she'd lost all her useful vision. Myself and my husband took it in turn of shadowing her 24/7, making sure that we rescheduled all of our arrangements to make sure somebody was with her continually. Which was really difficult. And Luke was there during those really, really tough times. Samantha, you know, has grown a lot since, 2020 to 2024, from going from spending every night in her bed to keep her safe, because something really stood out for me, that you get no second chance with suicide. So it was very much, we couldn't take our eye off her for a minute. But, things moved on. Things that changed, I suppose, after lockdown was that she got a placement at the Royal Blind School. She found mindfulness. We actually went on a full journey of understanding her condition, and allowing her to grieve, and understand. Samantha's got this quote that she says now, looking back, sport saved her life. We were really lucky for the fact that Samantha has 4 older brothers, and we felt growing up that there was no activity that she should be excluded from. If we couldn't adapt it, there was no reason why we couldn't adapt everything to make sure that she could take part. And sport was something that she really loved. And as she says, it saved her life. For me, that period of time was just so overwhelming. I really felt that my needs were completely secondary, which, most importantly was keeping her alive and well. So that was something that was really, really difficult. I think the points for me is looking after Samantha's been a full-time job. As she requires a sighted guide, I have to take her everywhere. She can't self-travel. She is on the waiting list for a guide dog, but it's a long wait because she is now, as we fast forward, a full-time elite athlete. They need a dog that will be able to cope with a really strenuous schedule that she has. One of the things that Samantha, when I look back, she started a YouTube channel when she was 10-year-old, and she had that camera going the whole time. And little do we know that all of those years in front of the camera, you know, has fast forwarded to the point that she is, you know, she's on Instagram. She's bringing awareness for visual impairments. She's using her lived experience on all of her exclusion from PE, all of the times when she was told you're blind hazard and you need to be removed, you know, was just a kind of a burning that was a fire that was lit within Samantha, that she decided that, you know, no, I'm going to be something in sport, and I'm going to stand up for other people with visual impairments or disabilities to make sure that you're included in sport and that there's no exclusion from it.
As Louise, as we suspected, people are finding a lot of joy from that kind of just the fact that Samantha's found a way through. But I was also wondering, what have you done? Because it's really important. You have kept her going, but how have you kept yourself going? Because it must have felt very dark at times.
Yeah, it has, and I kind of felt that I've lost my identity.
Hang on, we need to turn you on,
confidence.
Louise.
Hello, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think we just have to keep your camera off because we lose you as soon as your camera's on, sadly.
Camera's on. Yeah, that's fine. I lost my identity, and I'd spent so many years advocating for Samantha that if I wasn't talking about, you know, education or equality or, you know, how unfair life was for her, I didn't know how to hold a conversation, you know, so friends no longer invited me to places because it was just consumed by my daughter. And it's been a lonely kind of road. I'm lucky enough that, you know, Samantha is doing so well, and there's so many successes in the present day that we really have to, you know, I take my joy from that and hope that life will actually get easier. The unfortunate thing about that is I'm getting older. Samantha's getting older, but she still has the same needs as she's always needed. So that's really difficult.
I have seen that there is some kind of stuff you do together which makes me feel really happy when I look at you. So there's award ceremonies, there's trips abroad, and I always, well, I hope that kind of is the reward for you as well, that, you know, you've held on and you get to do some amazing things. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, Samantha has just absolutely astounded in what she's been able to achieve as a blind young woman. You know, she was nominated for the World Class Athlete Project last November with British Rowing, which means she's actually a full-time athlete and trains with British Para Rowing, and is, you know, a captain of the England blind women's football team, even though she's Scottish. Scotland doesn't have a team. But how fantastic that these opportunities, you know, keeping her active, keeping her doing what she loved, which was sport, you know, has been amazing. You're right, the opportunities to travel with sport has been amazing. We've got Paris this year, we've got Argentina, she's going to Italy next Tuesday. It's just phenomenal that she's having this opportunity. And I have to say, within especially England football, when I hand her over to the team, she is so supported, and she feels like she's found her community, you know, amongst other blind young women, and it's been so empowering for her. And those are the moments that I can then relax and say, she's over to somebody else that I know that all her needs are getting taken care of, and I can kind of relax.
Good, and you deserve to relax. And also, one thing that I've realised, that we don't give each other or ourselves enough credit sometimes. So you have done a phenomenal job, Louise. When I look back at where things were in 2020, and I feel full of pride and joy for you and Sam, and I know that you will find that time off with your husband to put your feet up or run round after your grandkids and do other things. But thank goodness for you, and it's so brilliant that she is shining. So there's been some conversation and chat about sport and how difficult it will be, so everyone bear with me. I want to thank Louise for coming on, for being brave, and kind of while we chat, think of the other things that maybe you have done. At the end, you can share the things that have helped you hold on, because that is amazing that you've done that. And I will share this video, because Sam has made us a video, everyone, just so you can see the amazing young woman she is now, and I'm going to try and share it. So thank you, Louise.
Hi, I'm Samantha and I'm a blind athlete, and welcome to today's video. Today I'm just going to be telling you a little bit about myself. So I am a full-time blind athlete and also an advocate for visual impairments. I do social media content to bring awareness to visual impairments, canes, disabilities and sport, to encourage people to take part in sport with or without a disability. I was told I couldn't take part in sport because of my disability, and it's driven me to want to create change in a positive way. As I said already, I do a lot of advocacy work, so I do work with Sight Scotland, I work with Paralympics GB on the Lived Experience Board. I also go into schools to advocate for visual impairment, to teach sport and to be a role model. My journey has never been easy, and losing my vision was the hardest thing I've had to deal with. After being told I couldn't take part in sport because of my vision impairment, it lit a fire in me to want to take part in sport at the highest level. And that's exactly what I did, playing blind football for England and also on the rowing pathway for GB. But that's not all the sports that I've done. I used to play goalball for Great Britain, and I also used to swim for Scotland. I hope this shows that you can take part in sport, you can do anything you put your mind to, and don't let your disability be the barrier in your life.
So yeah, that is a pretty good message. It's repeating again for me in my ear. So yeah, your daughter is pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you. We're so proud of her.
And you are too.
Thank you.
So we've just had some comments in the chat box, which are to you, Louise. We've had lots of amazing, inspired people about how well she's done for herself. Just want to say, from a personal point of view, I met Samantha and Louise at Bits of Family Weekend many years ago. And I always remember Samantha being as quiet as a mouse. And then the next Bits of Family Weekend that Samantha was at, she come and spoke for everyone. She was one of our guest speakers for the weekend. And the difference between the girl then that I first met and the girl that got up and was very brave and gave a great presentation, very inspirational. It is like two different young people, isn't it? So that's just how I know Sam and Louise. And people have asked about Sam's social media, so I've put her Insta in the chat for people if they are interested in following her on her social media. I think she puts her TikToks on there as well. Is that right, Louise?
She does, yeah.
I think I've written that to everyone instead of just to Amanda. One parent has said that they found sport really inaccessible, which I don't think is a point that you hold yourself. I think a lot of schools, depending on what they're attending, don't always make sport accessible for children, but it would be good for you to reach out for kind of specialist types weekends. New College Worcester do sports weekends. I'm sure Look do sports weekends. Victor do. There's RSBC, British Blind Sport as well. So that might be a good way of finding some accessible sports for your children. Lisa?
And actually, we've got a session that we'll share as part of the resources called Positive Participation in Sport, which has got some blind athletes. It's got lots of links. So, you know, we know it's a challenge, all of our organisations, but we have got resources that we can send to you. So thank you for kind of bringing that up. I can see Nicola's face because I think we have overshot a bit. So if that's okay with everyone, we're going to move on to listen to our wonderful mentors now. Yeah, I'm hoping I need to get rid of lovely Samantha from my screen. So welcome Callum and Lauren, who are Look Mentors. Look Mentors support younger visually impaired and blind young people, just to give support and guidance through our mentoring scheme at Look. And Callum and Lauren both work in the field of mental health. So I have set some questions for them. So my first one is hello. So Callum first, please can you just say hello to people and briefly outline your experience in the field of mental health?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So my name's Callum. I am a student counsellor, so I'm nearly finished my MA in counselling and psychotherapy. And I also work as a mental health support worker for Mind in Harrogate, and I'm based in the emergency department at Harrogate Hospital, which is interesting. And I'm also starting to train as a children and young people's counsellor in September. And obviously I'm a Look mentor, so that means I'm visually impaired myself. So I've got retinitis pigmentosa, and I've been registered severely sight impaired since 2018. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Callum. Brilliant. And Lauren, please can you do the same?
Yeah, sure. Hey, first off, I am totally blind with some light perception. I graduated uni in 2019 as a psychotherapist, primarily working with children and young people. I do work with adults as well. My kind of background is trauma and attachment, and I'm deviating off script slightly, but I just want to make it really clear to the parents that, you know, it's okay. It is a trauma. Like having a child with a disability can be traumatic. And then that compounded by the kind of lack of support and services also kind of adds to it. So it's okay to kind of feel the effects of that. That has nothing to do with my introduction. That's just pinged into my head during the meeting. But yeah, that is pretty much me. If I'm not doing paperwork, I'm drinking too much coffee. So yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. You can go first with this question. So what do you suggest to your clients who are feeling overwhelmed and burnt out? I know you both mostly work with children, but I guess in your experience.
Wait, you meant me, yeah?
Yeah, Lauren started,
okay,
cool.
Yeah. I think for me, it's find your circle of support, because, you know, the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, is really true, right? And it's truer when your child's got a disability. And, you know, reaching out is really necessary. Also, pick one small thing, you know, because there's a lot of expectation. I need to be mum or dad. I need to be, you know, almost like a nurse or a carer. It is really difficult. You know, and pick one. If things are overwhelming, you don't know where to start, pick one thing, you know, and the dishes and the laundry, that can wait, because you and your child, you know, you come first. And anyone that judges you for having a messy house really needs to live in the real world. You know, and focus on the things you can change and learn to kind of, it's hard, it's really hard, and I almost feel like a little bit of a hypocrite saying it, but learn to kind of take things as they come. It's really easy to look into the future and panic, but you know what? The future changes, and what is happening now isn't what's going to be happening in 6 years or 6 months' time. That was a really long answer, I'm sorry.
No, it's a very good answer. Thank you. I think we can't help but live in fear. And you'll find that in most of our panel events, whatever the topic is, the consistent advice from our mentors is try and let your children go. Try not to hold, and it's we can hear it, but it's not always easy. But yeah, it's very good to hear it again from Lauren. Thank you. Callum, what do you suggest to your clients, because you work with adults as well, I know, who are feeling overwhelmed and burnt out?
Yeah, it's similar to Lauren, to be fair. It's start small. So thinking about the things that help you to kind of refill that emotional bucket, or whatever analogy you want to use. And it can be something really small. So spending a bit of time in the garden, taking the dog for a walk. For me, is being active and doing exercise, but it doesn't have to be. I am never going to be on the Paralympic pathway, but I enjoy it. So it is finding those things that help you to give you that top up, and even just spending time, doing care things, that makes a massive difference. And similar to Lauren, you can't anticipate what's going to happen in years down the line. It's doing your best in the here and now. As counsellors, we get it drilled into us to look after ourselves, to help to look after other people. So we all go to therapy as counsellors. We have a supervisor to talk to. We have a village to do the support that we do. It's exactly the same for being a carer. You need to have that support network.
Yeah, I agree. And Joe and I, who run the parent support group, we have supervision because Look recognised that actually it's important. We have to just look after ourselves. Thank you. And have you got any advice from your own experiences that you can pass on to parent carers? Any reflections? Lauren, you can go first.
Sorry, could you just repeat that question for me?
Yeah. Do you have advice from your own experience, I guess, as a blind adult who's been parented, that you can pass on to parent carers?
Honestly, don't be afraid to screw up. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. Agencies aren't going to understand. School, I know that's a big one for a lot of parents. School was an absolute nightmare for me. I bloody hated it. I hardly ever went. But it's just one part of life, and often at risk of kind of really minimizing it, it's not always that big of a deal. Let your kids find their own way, and let your kids make mistakes as well. We're not perfect. I wasn't. I was the teenager from hell. But it's kind of being okay with the messy. You haven't got to have it all together. I feel like I just repeated myself from the question you asked me before, but
no, but we're reinforcing it, I think. So thank you. No, that's really good, and I think that's it. None of us should expect to be perfect parents. We have such a lot to manage, and actually, quite often, if we are able to stop and look after ourselves, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a much calmer, more rational parent if I've done something nice for myself, if I've given myself, like I went to an Elbow concert last week. It was absolutely amazing. And it gave me a real bounce and a lift. And so all of us should be able to do that, I think. Callum, what about some advice from you?
Yes, I would say, kind of similar again to Lauren, of learning from your mistakes, but being allowed to make those mistakes. I used to get really annoyed when people would just do stuff for me. So even little things. So, set the temperature on the oven. I can't read what the temperature is on the oven, but if someone puts a bump it on the oven, I can figure out what temperature to set it at. So, learning how to adapt to do things as a VI person rather than just thinking, oh, I'm VI, I can't do that. And I take that into everything I do now as an adult because I was allowed to make those mistakes of setting the oven at the wrong temperature and burning my dinner and and getting lost because my navigation skills weren't quite there yet. That's fine. Yeah, learning from your mistakes is a massive one for me. And it's okay to not be okay. It's the other thing I've learned a lot about the last few years. So embracing the fact that, yeah, I'm visually impaired doesn't make me lesser than. But accepting that I am has helped me a lot. So asking for help when I need it.
Brilliant. Thank you both. You both work in such important fields, and it's really great to have you at the meeting today. So, Charlotte, are there things that we can kind of reflect on from the chat? Is there any questions that people have got? I can ask everybody for Lauren and Callum.
Yeah, so yeah, we've had quite a lot of interaction in the chat. Somebody's commented, saying never thought of having a disabled child as a traumatic experience before, but exactly that's what it is. Susan has said, having suddenly just woken up to our reality is indeed extreme trauma. The last years have been head down and getting on with it and task. I think my menopause might be partly to blame for these most recent revelations for me. Been a hellscape to deal with, still lots to deal with, but kids need their counselling first before I can deal with mine. In Asian culture, people are cruel, dealing with comments is too much, so we have no support at all. Someone has asked, how do you deal with a VI teen who won't listen to advice with regards to A levels, has no structure and won't take advice or guidance? One of the parents has come back saying let them focus on a topic that interests them, so that improves their drives. So it says a lot of pressure to go on the pathways, and that parent is home educating, and rebellion is part of being a teen. Someone said my son has gone rogue during the most important and difficult time of his life. So yeah, I can understand why you're feeling down and frustrated. I think I've summarised everything there.
Brilliant, thank you.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry. Sorry. Susan said inspirational to hear young people thriving with VI and working in mental health services are almost impossible to access these days for children as they are complex cases compared to peer groups. So that's to Lauren and Callum.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, I don't know if people know about Fight Against Blindness, because they have, for your young people who need support, they have centres across, I think it's 5 or 6 hospitals now, where there's particular support, psychological support for VI young people and the family. So we'll make sure in our resources that we send that to you as well, and that's part of the research that I went to a conference at the beginning earlier this year, and that was the kind of opening, was to talk about the kind of effects of a visual impairment on the young person, but also the family and family stresses. So it's important to acknowledge, but also it's interesting that someone has said that finding their child's counsellor takes priority. I understand that, but actually we are the ones that hold it together. We are the ones that are, they come back to and they're angry with and they're upset with, and it's okay to look for support for ourselves. But it's really ingrained to put ourselves at the bottom of the list a bit. So yes, Nicola.
I just wanted to come in as well. I'm going backwards a bit, but just picking up something on the chat that had come up earlier when Louise was talking about Samantha getting to a really low point and thinking about wanting to hurt herself, to take her own life. And there's a couple of people who've just said something in the chat about it, and I just think it's really important to acknowledge that can be such a scary thought, or even the thought to entertain, that somebody is feeling, that your child is feeling that low. And I just wanted to say there's support out there for parents where they're where they're in that situation. So a few that have sprung to mind is, there's an organisation called Young Minds, there's Silence on Suicide, the NSPCC, and I'll just make sure we put that in the resources as well, that as a parent you can speak about, because we're so worried about it, of course, how to speak about it and to help your young person with it. So I just wanted to go back to that before we move on, so that you know that there are some resources out there if you find that your young person, your child, is feeling like that.
Yeah, and I'm really kind of heartened in a way about the support that people are already giving each other in the chat, and that's why it's great to have groups of parent carers come together, because we've kind of tried and tested, and often do have advice to share, and the community thing is really key. Having that place where we can share it all, the highs and lows, and kind of get advice, really helps to break isolation, so you don't feel like you're on your own. So yeah,
we've also had a thank you for Louise, Jane, in the chat. Thank you for sharing, Louise. It gives me hope that my child will start to feel better, and I think that's it, isn't it? As a parent, when our child feels better, we feel better.
yeah, absolutely. And Callum has also been writing some good advice as well. There is support available through the third sector for children and parent carers, sight loss charities, Mind, specific societies like Retina UK, Macular Society, more. Yeah, Retina UK have their own support groups, and I know they were thinking about developing ones for parent carers. So yeah, there are places out there, but sometimes when you're tired and exhausted, it's hard to start thinking about it. But yeah, we will send you links so you don't have to do some of that. So yeah, at the end of the session. So is it time for me and Suze to talk now? Yeah, so this is the lovely Suzanne, and we get to talk now about the Healthy Parent Carer course. Now, full disclosure, everyone, I live opposite Exeter University. So when Chloe was 3, I couldn't work yet, but I did need to find some meaning for what had happened. Didn't expect to have a child who was born deafblind, and she was a delight, but it's that feeling that I wanted to make sense of things. So I used to go along to their research. They did lots of different research at the Centre of Childhood Disability. And then I think they said that the biggest response they've ever had was a call out about health and well-being of parent carers. And I was there in the first meeting with a room full of other parent carers talking about the effects physically, mentally, that being a carer had. And it doesn't ever negate the joy that we get from our children, but there's definitely an impact. Most parents, your life changed when you become a parent, but when you become a parent carer, there is extra things that we take on. So fast forward, I worked for Look, and I talked to, again, Charlotte Carson about, wouldn't it be great to be involved with this? And Look invested in myself and Joe to do the training, to run the course. And Suzanne was one of the first graduate from our autumn 23 course. And I just wanted to come on to talk to her about it, because it all the way through the course is the looking at what you can do for yourself. So Suzanne, hello, nice to see you here. What do you feel was the importance of the course?
Well, the course for me, I think because I have three lovely children. So I have Zach and Isla, who are 15-year-old twins, and I have a 21-year-old daughter. But Zach is my lovely special young man who is severely sight impaired and has complex challenges. He's also autistic. So the 15 years leading up to now have been overwhelming and exhausting. And I think that 6 months ago, prior to going on the Healthy Parent Carer course, I think that I probably felt a little bit lost, if I'm really honest. And when the opportunity came up to go on the course, I had to give it some thought because, you know, we've all got the longest list of things to do every day. It's relentless, isn't it? And but actually, if I was really honest, I think my smile was a bit too bright. And when everybody said it, you know, how are you, Suze? How are you doing? You say, yeah, I'm fine, because nobody wants to be a Debbie Downer, do they? And, you know, I think I just felt guilty about a lot of things. You know, was I a good enough mum? Was I a good enough wife? You know, was the house tidy enough? Had I remembered all the different things I needed to do? So I think agreeing to go on to the Healthy Parent Carer course, I think it was a huge thing for me because it was something that I was deciding to do for myself. And chatting to you, I remember that call we had prior to joining up for the course. You know, we talked about, you know, what the course is about, and you know, I'll be honest, I thought, have I really got the time to commit to it? I remember we had that conversation, Jane, didn't we? And you really encouraged me to make that time. And I think if you remember back, Jane, on top of everything that was going on, you know, being a parent carer, we'd had a horrible leak in our house and we had to move out of our home while the insurance company came in and to sort it out. So we were in absolute chaos. And I joined the course, sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes, and something quite magical happened, didn't it? But there were lots of barriers to me wanting to join. Would you like me to say what I thought those were?
Yes, please, because
Okay.
I think they're the barriers for a lot of people, just that idea of things for ourselves.
Absolutely. So I think time is the big one, which is I haven't got time because actually we're at the bottom of the priority list. So doing something like signing up to something where you've got to make a regular commitment. I don't know about anybody else on the call, but I hold back from saying yes to things because I think, well, I don't know if I can that week because there's a lot going on. So time was a huge one for me. I also, if I'm really honest, and it makes me feel vulnerable saying it, but I felt vulnerable on that course on the first day where we talked about coping. I've got all my walls up and I was really worried, and I said it out loud, didn't I, on the first module. I said, Jane, I'm really worried that when you start asking, probing, would I, you know, was this going to open up a can of emotional worms for me? Because I'm just about held together. Most of the time I feel tired, overwhelmed, I could fall asleep on a washing line, you know, all of those feelings that we all have. And you were really, really reassuring around what the process was for the course. So I think for me, I felt most worried about feeling vulnerable. Who was going to be on the course? What was I going to be expected to share? I'm actually a very logical person. I know that I need to look after myself more and eat better and get more sleep and do and learn how to relax, which, you know, I'd kind of forgotten how to do that. You know, this is my normal for the last 15 years. I'd lived a stressed, anxious time with a ball of anxiety in my chest and dark times that, Jane, you know about with Zach. You know, he had a really, really challenging time where he gave up and felt he had no value in his life. And that was a really stressful time. So I think for me, I felt like there were a lot of barriers to signing up, but I'm very pleased I did.
Good. Yeah, and I can't, obviously, there's a, you know, it would be great that we could all kind of have the time and sign up and look, we'll continue to offer the course. But what are the things, I just wondered whether there were things that you have held on to that you can kind of pass on to other parents, the kind of nuggets that you can share, and I can kind of do a few as well, as I've kind of done the training and ran it a few times.
And you were a wonderful facilitator, and I think you know, a lot of the success of the course as well is because, and I think somebody else has said it tonight as well, that because you and Joe were parent carers yourselves, you understood implicitly what we were all feeling, and you know, none of us really knew each other, and I think it was just that very clever way the course helps you open up and show all your vulnerabilities and just talk through, spend time talking about the small things that make up all of the things you're anxious about. So, because it's never one thing, it's a million things at the same time, 100 miles an hour, that make you feel so overwhelmed. And I think what the course did for me was it made me slow down and think about each individual part of what was not why I wasn't coping. So now I think what I have are, I don't have the guilty fairy sitting right here, as we all have one, don't we? She's still there because it's not a magical fix, but she's in my pocket and she's zipped shut, because actually now I can draw on a set of tools, and some of those tools come from talking about different things, but some of those things come from your other parent carers that you're on the course with. So I'll just give you one example that really resonated with me, and I use it every day without fail, and this is 6 months later, and I've been on lots of courses and things haven't stayed with me because life's been too busy. And one of my lovely course members called Ellen said, and it was just one of those moments where we were sharing, and she said, you know what, every day I try and think of three things that have made me smile, or three things that have made me feel thankful for that day, because some days are horrid, aren't they? They're just awful, absolutely shocking from start to finish, and you don't know how you've got through the day. You climb into bed and you pull the duvet over and you just think, I want to get rid of that day. But Ellen said, whatever the day is, there is always three things. And we explored this and we talked about it a bit. And do you know what, she's right, because it was an unconscious thought process that actually we explored. Those three things don't need to be big things. They need to be small things that have made you smile. So I had a particularly bad week, or a really awful week, a couple of weeks back. And one particular day I said to my husband, I can't actually think of anything positive to say today about today. It's just been a shocker. There's been a million, everything I touched didn't go right, or there were things to worry about. And I sat down and thought, well, actually, no, there's always those three things. And they were really silly little things. And I'll tell you what they were. They might make you smile. I thought something that's just made me smile. And actually, the dog gave me a full facial lick at one point, and he looked really achieved with that. And it made me smile. So that was my first thing. I was really stretching for things. And on the dog walk, I'd forgotten to have a drink before I came out, because like everything, I'd shut out the door without, you know, all the things I needed. And I found a boiled sweet in my pocket, and it was probably been there for about a year. But do you know what? It was just a moment, and it was a mindful moment walking around the park, where one of the other things I did from my course, which was just notice. I noticed what was going on around me. So that was my second thing. And then just a Facebook memory that came up of my twins 10 years ago, dressed up in a silly book day costume. And those were my three things. And that was just, the course taught me to subconsciously disconnect from all of the stress and really look at the things that I value every day. And it is the smallest of things that has made a difference. And I think for me, you know, I've got lots of top tips I can share maybe at the end if there's time, Jane, but it is the smallest of things that you draw from other people as well. Those connections I made with my fellow parent carers, including yourself, Jane, because you're incredibly insightful. They were just small things, but they gave me this unconscious toolkit. And it's like this private thing that I have, and I kind of lift the lid in the morning and go, what am I going to do for me today? And it's just the smallest things, but I find they mount up and they just give me that little bit more resilience to cope with the day. And you know, everybody says, oh, Suze, you always look like you've got everything together. Well, I haven't. I genuinely haven't. There are days where I think, oh gosh, I feel really anxious today, or that's overwhelming me. But just for me, having that extra little toolkit has been really valuable, really valuable.
Good. And we all, and that's the thing, I think what the course does, and I want everyone to kind of hear, is that there are things, there are really tricky things that we cannot change. And, you know, it's in a way we have to kind of put them to one side and think about the things that we can change, the things we can do for ourselves. And I watch, so Suzanne's course was for 6 weeks, and because we did 2 modules each week, the course we're running now is 12 weeks. And you just slowly get to kind of change your mindset, but and do things like, I love it. I love watching some parents who start with, you know, of course we're all resistant. The idea of other people coming in, the other people taking our child or putting them to bed, you know, but actually by the people are saying, oh, I've asked for help, or this person might be able to help me, or I reached out to this person, and to understand that other people in our lives want us to ask sometimes. They see us, they see what we carry, and they're actually really pleased to be asked to do things for us. To ask our partners or sisters or mothers just to take a little bit of the weight that we carry off, to be able to go for a walk and notice. In our groups, we've noticed a lot of different nature, from swans kind of having a paddle, to robins, to squirrels, but actually all those things, it just helps that panic, because we spend a lot of time as parent carers in that fight or flight. There must be something else, there must be, but to be able to actually, like Sue says, to take a breath and to start, even if we can't quite put ourselves at the top of the pile, put ourselves at least in the middle, like Sue says, what am I going to do for myself today? Because if we can be kind to ourselves, and if we can do things for ourselves, then actually our whole family benefits. And the whole thing around mental health, it really helps to, if we can look after ours even a little bit better, it can reflect on the other people that we're with as well. I don't know if you have anything else to add about that, Suze.
Yeah, I think the guilt, that was one I think we spent quite a lot of time talking about on the course. It was because I think it's such a big part of every day, isn't it? And I think that one of the things I remember, we did each week we reflected on what we'd worked on the previous week. And one of the things that not a light bulb moment, because we all understand we need to talk and share and ask for things, but we're not very good at it, because we've all had to do everything all of the time, and it's that whole thing about, if you want something doing, do it yourself, and I think you get so used to doing that. But we really reflected on guilt, and I remember saying, actually, I'd said to my husband, we've been married 23 years, and he's an amazing husband, but I'd actually sat him down and said, I do feel I carry around an awful lot of guilt about this or that or the other, and I don't really want to go and say, could I go out or do something that would take me away from home, because I would just feel like I was leaving you in it, and that makes me feel even more guilty. So I don't want any more guilt, so I don't do it. And we talked that through, and it was amazing, because it was a wonderful discussion that I had with my husband that I probably should have had a really long time ago, because when we talked it through, it was really simple, which was that he wanted me to feel more you know, he said, you do so much for the family, you know, go out, I want you to go to that Pilates course I started it, Jane, didn't I? The same week as I was doing Healthy Parent Carer, I said, right, that's it. I'm going to a Pilates class. And I went to that Pilates class. And honestly, on the way home, I wanted to wind the window down and bib the horn and say, I've just been to a Pilates class. And, you know, because I don't do that sort of thing. And I remember Natty in our course said she just put some music on in the kitchen and had a little bit of a dance in the kitchen with her children. And it was just a magical moment where all of the stress of the day kind of just drifted away, and there was just those moments. So I think it's those kinds of things where you're able to spend really quality time talking about all of the small things that go to make up all of that overwhelm. And when you start chipping away at each of them and applying those clever tools you learn on the course, all of a sudden it's not one big ball of everything. It's little compartments that you go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do a little bit of that for myself, or this, or I'm going to apply that strategy. And that's, you know, ultimately what helps.
Thank you. Brilliant. So, Nicola, I think it's back to you. I think the timing's all right. We might be a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I've still got this image, Suze, of you like winding down the window to shout that you'd just been to a Pilates class. I love that. That really made me giggle, and I sort of felt that, you know, that joy of just like, you know, out doing something for you for a moment, and that feels really nice. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks everyone for sharing, like all our panel members. Yeah, just sharing what your experiences have been like, sharing your tips for how to sort of like, yeah, just approach these barriers, approach ways to really gently create a bit of time for yourself within the, you know, the realistic parameters of what's available. And I've got a whole list of things that I'm going to share with you. And thanks to all of you who've been making, you know, all our participants who've come today and making comments. And I think what Jane said about, you know, everybody kind of supporting each other. There's lots of things in the chat about, you know, what the panel members have said that's resonating with you, but things, you know, resonating with each other and connecting with each other. So thank you for, yeah, coming along and sharing some of your stories.
I've just seen that comment about the rain washing the bird poo off the car. That was my thought, because yeah, my car's been covered recently. I've had no time to even look at it, and then the rain came. You know, sometimes you have to hold on to little things.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I just read out you know, I'm going to sort of like read out some of the things that people have said as a reminder, and we'll write these down and send these to you as well afterwards. But I just wanted to say there's some kind of phrases that have come up, or some metaphors that I think can really help me when I'm like, when it falls off my list. So that, and that's one of these things, thinking about where you are in the list, you know, and what Jane said, maybe just being able to move up that list a bit. We're not, you know, this isn't about putting yourself at the top of the list. That's sort of undoable, really. But to move a bit further up the list and give yourself some priority. And I think sort of thinking about this sometimes, if we just forget, or we're too busy, sometimes a metaphor can come back. So thinking about this, you can't pour from an empty cup. Somebody had said that on the chat. You can't pour from an empty cup, absolutely. So it has to be refilled somewhere, replenished somewhere. I think Callum was saying that as well. And I don't know if this has come up tonight, but I remember Charlotte saying in our planning about, you know, this is what happens on planes, about when they give you the safety talking, put your oxygen mask on first and then help your loved ones, because if you don't have it on, you can't help anybody. And that's just really powerful for me. And I thought this idea that Suze had said about the guilty fairy, she still has the guilty fairy, but it's not on the shoulder, it's locked away in a pocket, not locked away, zipped away. So it's harder to come out. And I think, if we can create these metaphors for ourselves about, yeah, how we talk to ourselves, how we can put the part of us that won't allow or enable. Sometimes it's not sometimes about allowing, is it, but enabling that time for ourselves or reaching out for the support. A few of you have said in the chat that actual reaching out is really, really hard. So, and can be really challenging. So if we can think of like really kind ways to talk to ourselves that work, because it is vulnerable. I know, again, Sue's brought that up. It is vulnerable to ask for help. So let me just recap on a few things, and then I'm going to ask our panel members if they've got anything else that they want to add. So a 5-minute nap, I think that actually was from the video. A 5-minute nap can help. I love that. I love that. I'm going to practice that as well. Just taking time out with a cuppa, that when you're having a cuppa, you don't have to write a list or look on the computer, or you can just look out of your window or close your eyes or watch something on TV, whatever it is. Really small steps. So I was thinking about what Louise had said about the loss of identity, and like really when she realized that, and also she knew Samantha was doing better, to be able to like take small steps to rebuild her identity, and some of the time, you know, to be able to take some time for herself, really small steps. A few of you have said that. So picking something small, what might it be? It might be going out in the garden. It might be looking at nature, noticing things, really grounding yourself when you're out and about, or when you're in the house doing something. It might be a smell, it might be a noise, that just for a few minutes, you can take some time out of those busy thoughts. Finding your circle of support, taking things as they come. You know, that sounds like that would be, you know, if you can do that just sometimes, doesn't have to be all the times, but, and I think that really connects in with some of, I think it was Jane who said this about, you know, thinking about what you can control, what you can't control, what you can do something about, what you can't, and a practice of letting it go. The stuff that you can't do anything about, let it go. Don't be afraid to screw up. I love that. Thank you, Lauren. I think that's one to be remembered. And learning from mistakes. I think that was from you, Callum, about just, yeah, give something a try. If it doesn't work or it's not for you, it's okay. It's absolutely okay, because it's okay not to be okay. That was something that came up. Asking for help when you need it, and asking for help from people who you trust. So I think that's about getting your support network together. And taking some time for yourself and prioritizing yourself for a small part of time doesn't negate your love for your child. It doesn't negate the joy that they give you. That really touched me as well. It doesn't negate that. It doesn't mean that you don't care, and it doesn't mean that you, it doesn't mean it's not okay to take that time. It doesn't mean anything negative about how you feel about your child, because I think that can really come up. Committing to yourself some time for you. I think that's really big. Like, and again, Suzanne and Jane were talking about this, that, I mean, that was a course where you're committing to go every week or every 2 weeks, but committing to something like thinking about 3 things every day that have brought you a smile, committing to yourself that you're going to have 5 minutes making your cuppa every day, or something small. I think the commitment to that feels really useful. Talking about the small things you're anxious about, so you can break them down and look at each one separately. That can really sort of slow it down, can't it? Let's take one thing at a time rather than all these things together. And what was the last one? Oh, there was 2 more. I love this as well, about like when you do ask for help, the people who you ask can feel really honoured to help you, and they feel like, wow, this person trusts me with everything that they're holding, and what a gift it is for that other person to be able to help you. So it's not always burdensome. Very, very, very rarely is it burdensome. It's actually a gift for them. And dancing in the kitchen. Absolutely. Little dance in the kitchen on your own, with your child, with your partner, with your dog, with your cat, with your goldfish, whatever. Sounds great. So they're all the things that have come out of tonight. I'll say a little bit about what RSBC do for within our service for parents, and then Jane and Charlotte can say something about what Look and Victor do for a reminder if you don't know. and then we'll go to our panel members. Sorry, Jane, did you want to say something before I say that?
Well, I was just thinking for all those, because I have said there are things that we can and can't control, but we did introduce this all about the overwhelm, about kind of all those things, the services and stuff, where I find really helpful if you can, however you are, even if you're trapped in your house, find a way of getting out some of that aggression, because it is so damaging, that frustration and anger that we legitimately feel. You know, I did a body combat class when I could, the 2 hours a week when Chloe was younger, I could get out. But even if it's punching a pillow or shouting in a room, or just to be able to physically express sometimes, and then you can let it go. But I do actually find that really, really helpful, because there's always going to be things that we can't change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so letting it go somewhere. And actually, let's do that bit first. If there's anything from the panel, has anybody got any further kind of top tips for being able to kind of find that little bit of space for yourself to manage it when you can't find it or you can't change anything? Has anybody got any last bits they want to add to our list? Or in the chat? You can always put something in the chat. Sorry, Callum, was that you?
Hi, this is Vinodya, a parent of a severely visually impaired child. I just messaged on the chat as well.
Okay.
Basically, the challenges most of the parents we have is our child is not just severely visually impaired, but has additional needs, and that makes life, more difficult. Whereas we see children with disability or school, they don't understand the child. Parent understands. It's difficult to convey across and get the right support, and that creates a lot of pressure. And as you rightly started with the session and said how parents, and get affected, their own emotional, physical, mental health and well-being is mainly because of that writing, making the children sleep at night, late night, and then write emails to so many agencies, and that builds up unnecessary pressure. So is that, just to cut it down, is that something you could, this session was wonderful, but is there anything you could guide us through to cut down all these issues, or it's a difficult one, but get the right understanding how to deal with social, let's say, children with disabilities, or maybe the EHCP related issues. So something which will educate parent and may be able to cut down these long conversation into a shorter ones with the relevant parties, and something in that line. That's just my thought.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up, and I've just seen what you've said in the chat. I think certainly Jane and Charlotte, we could have a talk about it, and there might be something that's that's already been done from one of our organisations. When I say being done, like we've talked about that in a particular forum. There might be some kind of ways of thinking about it, but I think what you've said is that is part of it, that there isn't always a particular way, that it depends on the services and who you get to speak to in the different areas. So I think you're right that this is the thing that causes the stress. You have the day when you're just managing and doing everything that you need to do as a parent, and then you have to write all the emails, look at all the, who do you need to contact next, and I don't think there is a shortcut to that. Unfortunately, I think it's managing some of that. So we can certainly consider what tips or ways that we can think about that. But I think that is part of it. That is part of the challenge, is because I don't know. Would you say that's right, Jane and Charlotte, that happens so much? People have to, it becomes a burden on the parent rather than the service.
Yeah,
the sector.
I've touched on this before. I think when we were planning it, and it's not something that I'm going to recommend to everyone, but I come across that quite frequently. We moved 5 minutes down the road, changed local authority, and everything that I'd spent years getting into place for my daughter was stripped back by the new local authority. And I'd done that dance for so many years previously. I've always found going straight to the MP has worked with me. I think that things move a little bit quicker if you are hitting hitting barriers. You know, obviously it depends on the MP in your local area and how responsive they are to it, but that has always been kind of really useful for me in the past. I don't know if it could help anybody else, but it has helped me not to feel so bogged down with trying to get things into place for my child that I know that she needs, and that the local authority probably know full well that she needs as well, but they're just not in a position to financially accept it at that point. So I just wanted to give my little nugget of advice there, and what I tend to do when I come across that.
Yeah.
We're part of an education advocacy, like a cross-sector kind of cross-sector meeting, and just so you know that there is a huge recognition for how difficult it is, and it's becoming worse. So it's More Vision, who have a really good in Devon, but they have a really good educational advocacy service, and Blatchington Court Trust and possibly Guide Dogs, hosted by Look, are going to do a how to obtain an effective EHCP session in July. So that I get your frustration, but we just be aware that we're trying to do something about that subject. And we will also put together kind of the other organisations, Council for Disabled Children, Contact, that do some support and campaigning. We have also talked about, as a cross-sector, how to raise this again higher up within kind of Parliament, the whole thing about our BI young people, and how, you know, with the low incidence, high impact disability, how, you know, they can't be ignored. You know, there is there a way to raise our voices. So I do really feel though that, so a little bit of looking after ourselves, but also knowing that there is a bigger picture kind of that we want to try and help with as well.
Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Any other points that our panel want to raise about sort of summarising any things that might be useful to take forward?
Can I just make a really I mean, it might be a totally useless suggestion, but I'm going to throw it out there. A lot of the emails and the school stuff that you have to do is really repetitive. You feel like you have to explain yourself 20 times to 20 different people. So I'm lazy and I look for shortcuts. So it might be worth making some kind of cheat sheet, right? So almost like an about me page, but a little bit more medical and clinical. Just so that you haven't got to go around looking for the documents and stuff, because you've already got it there, and then you just kind of like pick out the relevant bit. I hope that doesn't sound really contradictory, like that I can't even speak. I hope it doesn't sound really patronising, but I just, you know, figured it might be worth a shot.
Absolutely, Lauren, thank you. Yeah, so about being able to kind of have one store of information that you can then use for different applications, I was going to say, but different documentation that needs to be filled out. Thank you.
Yeah, I said something similar in the chat, almost having a script that you can copy and paste into an email to say, my needs are XYZ, or my child's needs are XYZ.
Yeah.
Sometimes people reading this, I mean, the end user might think, oh, I read this earlier, because we are putting up, let's say, a child's diagnosis at the top, or maybe, I mean, I do that, and just so that the recipient understands what's the needs of the child, because sometimes it's not the same recipient. But and also I put in like some acts, the law at the bottom as a reference, that you are supposed to, it's a duty of care that you are supposed to provide this support. But I think they all know this, and how much they care and how much they can support is a bit challenging. And yeah, I do have that structure in place, like what you suggested is a wonderful tool. But what I was trying to say is the recipients are almost the same people sitting in local authority. They would see this on multiple conversation, but they sit on it basically. They just sit on it. They sometimes think this is the same email having the same information, like diagnosis or maybe the acts or the contents. So that's my feeling. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the frustration, isn't it? Suzanne, would you like to say something? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to acknowledge that, it's this discussion is one that's a really, really common one for parent carers to feel really overwhelmed by the battles, particularly around securing support and having those conversations with schools and with the local authority. And it is really, I think it's one of the most anxiety inducing, because it's something that you can't control. And when you don't feel listened to, I think that can have a huge impact on your mental health. I know certainly, I've gone through the biggest kind of battles for Zach's education. And even when you do achieve some success, it's never you never quite get there. And I think that, what everybody's saying about having that, help with a narrative and being able to advocate for yourself, because I think sometimes, when you become really frustrated and overwhelmed, sometimes you're not the best version of yourself when you're trying to advocate for yourself and talk to the schools, especially if you're not getting the responses that you feel you should be, and from all parties, or feeling ignored. I think it's really easy to become frustrated, and then relationships can break down in that way. So a lot of the things we've been talking about looking after our mental health, it's frustrating because you've got this constant source of negative behavior that I think is what this thread's talking about, which is that, how can I concentrate on giving back to myself and finding time for myself when I've got all of this negative noise going on at the same time? And it's, how do you balance that? And I'm not saying I have the answer. I do know from previous experience, just staying really calm and being really clear and not trying to just simplifying your communications, just being firm but fair, but fairly unrelenting, is the only piece of advice I can give, is that eventually you will be heard. You will never win all of the battles that you take on, because we all want 100% perfection for our wonderful young people, but it's an ongoing battle. But most importantly, look after yourselves and just think about all those things that, Nick, you've said. I had on my little list just to say, don't set unrealistic targets for yourself. I honestly think, having gone on other courses before, that you come away thinking, I'm going to make this big change in my life, and actually that's not possible and it's not realistic. So if the only thing you set yourself for you tomorrow is 5 minutes and a cup of tea and your favorite chocolate biscuit, looking out the window and taking in the world, or finding time just for a 10-minute dog walk or something, or picking up the phone to a friend, it's about not being too unrealistic about that, starting small. So that was one thing, I wanted to say. And the mindfulness one is a huge one. I know that Sam's mum talked really well about mindfulness and how that had helped Sam. And you don't have to go and stand on one leg in a yoga pose in the middle of the park to mindfulness is just a change of mindset and noticing things around you, and that can be really helpful.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that response, Suze. That was really good to hear. Well, I think I'm just wondering, Jane, Charlotte, does that feel like that's probably a good place to leave it there? Or have we missed anything that we wanted to say or do before the end?
No, I don't think so. We will kind of put some links. There's some really great links from Mind. There's some really great links, Jess, that you might, there's no pressure, but, having some relaxation tips, or, some of it you might find a moment to think about. But just to reinforce, it's a lot of stress that you're carrying, that it's okay to feel that. In fact, I'm in touch with a woman who runs a brilliant kind of website called Ability Net, I think it is, but it's also all about parent wellbeing, and they've just released a paper on trauma. So I'll make sure you all can have a link to that as well, because it feels timely. I want to thank Charlotte and Nicola for just taking the time with me and Joe to think about this evening and what we want to develop for parents, because I think it's hopefully, though we can't, it's been able to resonate a bit. Charlotte, do you want to talk about what Victor offers as well before we go? So get to talk about our organisations as well.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on it quickly. So I'm Shal, I'm a parent carer, and I run parent services at Victor. We have a dedicated website for parents, which is called victorparents.org.uk. That's got all our mental health support, plus information and everything you need. I also run the online support group, which is based on Facebook, and we've got over 1,000 members of that now. Similar to Jane and Nicola, I do a monthly workshop program. It's not always directly related to mental health, but we do find that parents do feel happier and more settled if they feel better informed. And we cover topics that will assist in the raising of their children. And I'm also the qualified sleep practitioner for the charity. Sleep and mental health are inherently linked. Whether or not it's your mental health suffering because you can't get your child to go to sleep at night, or your child is struggling with sleep, it has been a huge issue for me in my life, and I come across it quite frequently. So now through Victor, we offer free sleep support for the young people, which is in turn going to help the parents sleep better, which means we will have happier mums and dads at home, and then happier children. But that's just a really quick roundup from me, and I just refer to Look and RSBC quite frequently because they've got some amazing programs on offer, and I think it's all nice that we work together in that respect. And just a quick one, we accessed the RSBC support. It wasn't for myself or my VI child, it was for a sibling. So we've used it in the past and it has worked and it's been very helpful. So I just wanted to give a little plus point for that service as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I echo, it is really good that we can work together on this. So Nicola, do you want to talk a little bit about Families First, and then I'll summarise with Look and say thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Yeah, so within RSBC, we have a Families First service where we offer support to the whole family when there's a young person in the family with a vision impairment. So that can be kind of one-to-one support to the child themselves, or to a sibling, or to the parents, or kind of informal parent arrangements as well. So we can offer one-to-one emotional wellbeing supports within the area. We work within England and Wales for that. And we also have some connecting families groups. So we have a connecting families where they're small groups. We think about a certain topic, some of what we've talked about tonight, about kind of managing and battling all the systems that are in place and what might be good options for that. And we have that once a month, like Victor and Look do. And we're just starting one actually for early years, so preschoolers as well, a specific group for preschool children. Well, for preschool children parents. So we've got that available for parents as well.
Brilliant. And Look, we have our brilliant mentors that your young people can access if you email info@look/uk.org, then I will give you all the information, but there is a waiting list, but it's worth getting on there because sometimes your child might not be quite ready, but then by the time you get to that point they will be ready, and they could connect with some amazing people like Lauren and Callum. And the parent support group meets every fortnight, but our next meeting, because of half term, is going to be another panel event, and it's about progressive inherited sight loss. So details to be arranged, but again, it will be lots of people with lived experience talking about it, supporting each other, offering advice and life hacks. So thank you all so much. You've all come and been able to be with quite an emotive topic, and yeah, we do appreciate it. Look also have a WhatsApp group, and we will of course send you all the links to the things we've discussed. We will go away and pull these resources together. It can take a couple of weeks, but that is just because we're trying to make it as good a resource as possible. We'll publish it on our website, and RSBC and Victor will also make sure that they make people aware, and I'll also send you all an email with it in. So yeah, thank you all for participating. I think the panel are going to stay on this call, but for now, everybody else, thank you so much.